So, with another week of WSL action under our belts, we are going further into this 25-26 season and understanding where these teams lie in the table. And Harry, a lot of close matchups this week, a very enjoyable week of football.
Exactly that. We knew this weekend was going to be a big one with all of the top six facing another top six side and all of the bottom six facing another bottom six side. So this was the game week, I think, where we've now really started to see where each team's level is at, where these kind of sides are going to be, what end of the table they're going to find themselves in. But yeah, it was a massively important game week, and for the side who won, a massive 3 points, and for the side who lost, well, it was pretty damning. But yeah, as you say, a brilliant weekend of WSL action.
Indeed, and where else to begin than with a game in Manchester? Now that could mean one of two things, but we are going to start with Manchester City 3 to Arsenal. Arsenal's woes continuing then. There was a real struggle to create chances in this game for Arsenal, and obviously they held their own for periods of the game, but it felt that Man City's goals were well-worked routines, and Arsenal relied on what were somewhat wonder strikes to get them through the game.
Yeah, it was a tough game for both sides, I think, at times, and that was the key difference for me, was that when Man City looked vulnerable, Arsenal didn't create anything, didn't punish them, but when Arsenal looked vulnerable, City did take their chances and found the goals to win the game. And as you say, without that Kelly goal, it looked at that point that City were just going to find themselves going to a win. But overall, I thought that it was one of those games that it could have gone either way. At the end of the day, 3-2, it's a very tight game. City did well to get it across the line, and it could have swayed in either direction. But as I said, both sides looked a little bit shaky at times in this match. The difference is that when City were doing well, they took advantage of that factor, and when Arsenal were the ones on top, they didn't do anything with it, and that let them down massively because, I mentioned it on the stream, if you don't do anything when you've got the ball, if you don't create anything or put the opposition under pressure in terms of putting their goalkeeper under the pump, then they're going to go right up the other end and punish you. And that's exactly what happened in that first half. But overall, it wasn't convincing from either side, but City did enough to get the win across the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a harsh assessment of City. I don't think City played particularly poorly in this game. I thought they definitely have defensive weaknesses, and they were exposed at times in this game, and probably could have been exposed more by Arsenal. But I thought they were very good at creating chances. And on another day, if they take more of their opportunities, I think they would have been in a more comfortable position. But they allowed Arsenal back into the game in moments. They should have been up by more than a goal going into half time. That for me changed the game state, and perhaps Arsenal don't come out with the same conviction as they do in the second half. So I agree to an extent that this game is, it was a tight one. It could have gone either way for certain aspects, but I think City were the better side on the day. I thought Arsenal were just way too narrow. Everything for Arsenal didn't really work. They couldn't use the width effectively. I think that's where we've seen City really struggle this season, is when their backline gets pulled apart, and when you've got players like Jade Rose, who are very inexperienced, very new to this league, and don't 100% understand their role in the system, and no one in the back four does, because it's a new system, they're learning it for the first time. And in the Chelsea game, we saw them get pulled apart, and there was lots of gaps in central areas, but Arsenal just weren't wide enough or direct enough. It was so slow, it was so passive. I think the fact that both fullbacks seemed to be coming inside rather than anyone overlapping was really weird for me. I think both wingers struggled to have any impact on the game, and there was no service to Alessia Russo, who didn't really touch the ball in this match. So, I look at the goals that they scored, Arsenal, and you've got it was just a matter of City not closing down long shots, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of those where I think that it's exactly what you're saying, where the two goals, either, the first one, for example, was the only time that Arsenal got the ball out wide. And, as you say, you give Mariona Calorente that kind of space, that kind of freedom in that position, she was always going to find the back of the net, and a really well taken effort. And then, Chloe Kelly against her former side with an absolute rocket. And at that point, we thought she might have rescued a point for Arsenal. But yeah, it was really difficult from Arsenal. And as you say, I think that if anything, Arsenal's good bits of play came from City not playing well. That first 20 minutes, City did not get out. And yes, that's a credit to Arsenal's press, but that is also a credit to City having problems. But Arsenal didn't do anything with it. They didn't punish it. And it just baffles me how they've got some of the best wide players in the world. They've got some of the best fullbacks in the world, and they don't utilise them. They don't get the ball out wide. Katie McCabe is one of the best attacking one of the best fullbacks in the world going forward. Yet we barely saw her get an opportunity to get wide and swing the ball in, and it baffles me as to why you've got her coming inside and being the one inverting that. No sense. Get McCabe out wide and get her swinging that ball in. It was really bizarre.
But it's interesting as well, because I think in the build-up phase, what Arsenal looked to be doing in the second half, which was a slight tweak. So they wanted to push Mariana Caldente on. The way they did that was they inverted McCabe to create that 3-2 rest defence. But the issue was neither of the wingers were too static to make that work. If you're going to do that, you need your 10s, which was Caldente and Pelova. You need them to buzz. You need them to be a hive of activity. And your wingers, when those players pick up the ball, they need to come alive. They need to make those runs. They need to make the pitch incredibly wide. And they didn't do that. So they really struggled, Arsenal, in terms of being able to play through City and offer threat. Oftentimes, Arsenal would get into a position where they had that territorial dominance. And actually, I think possession went to Arsenal. Yeah, 53%, 47%. It's fairly negligible. But they had more of the ball. And especially, they had more of the ball in City's half. But the problem was they were just too passive to actually create anything. And oftentimes, we'd see this almost U-shape of passing formation where they just knock it around Manchester City, and then eventually someone would get bored of doing that and put a fairly aimless cross into the box. And they just didn't create anything from that at all in this game, Arsenal. So without Caldente picking up the ball on the edge of the box and putting it in the top corner, without Chloe Kelly being able to come up with an individual moment, drive inside, and this is the wingers were never direct because they weren't on their favoured side. If you have Olivia Smith on the left wing, she's running at players, and with how high Kasparai was, that could have been dangerous. But instead, you had Ford on the left, which isn't her favoured side, and Smith on the right, which isn't her favoured side. And neither of them really created anything. You bring Kelly on, you let her drive inside, and she released a cannon of an effort that almost salvaged the day for Arsenal and papered over the cracks that remain in what has been a fairly shaky start to the season for the Gunners. But obviously then City find that winner for Iman Bene, and it's yet more poor defensive work from Arsenal. I think it's quite interesting. I think this shows us quite a few things about how Arsenal have gone in this first few weeks, because I think from the first 4 games you would have deduced that Arsenal were quite good defensively because the goals they conceded have been very weird. It's the penalty in the London City game. It was the weird floaty cross that Van Domselaar misjudged in the West Ham game, and it was Lucy Parker's late equaliser in the Villa game. So there's always a bit of context added to those in the moments that they were scored and the manner in which they were scored, where you'd go, well, they're not really down to the defensive structure. But in this game, Arsenal were pulled apart by Manchester City. 6 big chances created by City, only 2 converted, 4 missed. That's a poor rate for Man City. 18 shots, 9 on target for Manchester City, 2.2 XG created. So it's one of those. City had lots of high quality chances that they should have put away. Arsenal, by contrast, 16 shots, not a bad tally. But I think this has been the same problem with Arsenal all season. 7 shots on target, but only 2 big chances created and 1.78 XG. So it's the same problem that Arsenal have had all season, where they are able to get into really good positions, but they're not really creating great quality chances.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where that kind of level of XG is absolutely fine. But as long as you're not conceding a higher XG at the other end, and City, being over 2 is not good enough from Arsenal. The reason they've got away with missing those big chances is because the oppositions they've played so far haven't created any, haven't done particularly well either. But you look at the 2 games that Arsenal dropped points in, and it's, especially the City game, it's 2 sides that have come at Arsenal. Even the Man United game, although Man United are a very, very good side, they had one game plan, and that was to simply not lose. United sat deeper, and they let Arsenal have the ball and let Arsenal come onto them. But in this game, City, when they got the opportunity, they came at Arsenal, they went at them, and when that Arsenal backline was put under pressure, they really, really struggled. And again, it's the same problems that we said they'd have going into this season. When you take Leah Williamson out of that backline, when dropping Katie Reid for this game when she's been superb. Katie McCabe, whose defensive discipline isn't brilliant at the best of times, let alone...
She was very lucky not to concede a penalty.
Because twice.
That blatant... Well, yeah, but I think the more blatant one was just barging into Kasparai off the ball. And it's the kind of one where you get away with it in a world without VAR, but the assistant referee's right in front of it, and she's got to signal to a ref there. But yeah, it's, again, ill-disciplined. But yeah, it's what you come to expect.
It was exactly what we knew it was going to happen when you get a world-class front 3, not even a fully fit City front 3, but still containing brilliant quality. When they went at Arsenal and pulled them apart, they were at 6s and 7s, and we said it at times that they were all over the place. There was one moment where City were rushing forward, and bar the back four, there was no other Arsenal players in shot because they were all walking back, and and then of course because they're outnumbered, the defence gets pulled apart, and they looked all over the place at times. The first goal for sure is a difficult one because at the end of the day, it is Khadija Shaw. Whenever City put the ball in the box, no matter who the defenders are, it's usually Khadija Shaw who wins the header and puts it home. So, that one's fair enough. But I thought the other two goals, especially the third goal, I mean, I think Ruben Moy gets a little bit unlucky. But again, that unluckiness comes through a lack of conviction because all she's done is stuck a leg out at it, and the ball it's bounced through to Bene. If Ruben Moy comes in and puts in a big strong challenge there, doesn't commit a foul, doesn't smash into Bene, but comes into it with a little bit of commitment, then the ball just would cleanly fly away. But instead, she dangles a leg. It's not good enough. It bounces through, and Bene scores. And it's things like that I just think Arsenal, I said it, I think it had to be more combative from Arsenal during the game. When City come onto them, the way you react to that is by going right back at them, being aggressive, coming onto them. It's how they got the equaliser. They started really sharp in the first minute, bang, 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 moved the ball around and scored a goal. And that was what it needed. High tempo, aggressive, good football. But apart from that little snapshot there at the start of the second half, we didn't see enough of it from Arsenal. I think they had to be stronger, especially in a match of this magnitude. They had to take the fight to City because City were coming at them hard, and Arsenal didn't really react. They tried to just hang on in there under pressure, and of course that didn't work, and they conceded.
And it's weird because it felt when they scored that goal, when Khadija scored that goal, it felt like they'd been handed the blueprint on how to pull City apart. But similar to why they drew the United game and ultimately drew the Villa game, it was just too passive from that moment. Yeah. You'd think, I thought in that moment, they're going to take momentum from this, take inspiration, and they're going to play some good football in this half. And it'd be interesting to see how City respond to that. And after that goal, they just seemed to go back to what they're doing in the first half. And it wasn't working. They went way too passive. But yeah, I think for all of City's goals, Arsenal could have done better. The Kasparov cross into the box, forwards got to track that right. It's a great ball from Fujino. The disguise that she puts on it, phenomenal. But forwards got to track that run of Kasparov, criminal at this level. So yeah, it was one of those games. I didn't think Arsenal played particularly well. The other thing I want to say on the XG, because obviously the values look fairly similar with a 0.5 difference, is that the majority of Arsenal's expected goals came in that last 20 minutes. Or a large chunk, when they threw on 3 attackers, they kept Russo on, and they played pretty much a 4-4-2. But ultimately, that's why City probably got that final goal, because Arsenal didn't track back, and City had an overload. And Iman Bene went on to score. But yeah, let's talk individuals. Jeglertz, what a performance from her, really stepping up into that role this season. But I thought, has looked really good in the opening few games, but showed a real maturity and a great game understanding in this match. I think.
Absolutely. To take a young attacking player like Jeglertz and turn her into a midfielder who can now go both ways very comfortably is massive credit to Andrée Jeglertz. And I said it on the stream as well. It's template Jeglertz. Coming into a side, taking a young player, putting them in a new role, and watching them shine. And that's exactly what we've seen with Jeglertz so far this season. But I think that when she comes forward, she looks brilliant. But that isn't the main bit that excites me, because we knew she could do that. We knew she's a very good player in the final third and in and around the edge of the penalty area. It's the defensive contribution and the defensive work she's putting in that just astounds me, because to take an attacking midfielder and for her to look so comfortable as more of a defensive midfielder now, very combative despite not being the tallest or the most physical player, she just gets stuck in. And I think that it's exactly what you need. She just constantly running, constantly working, and her and Hasegawa in that midfield, it just runs like clockwork. It's absolutely brilliant. The rotation between who's pushing up and who sits in, they can both do both jobs brilliantly. And yeah, massive credit to Jeglertz, because she was phenomenal as to be a 2-man midfield in there for Man City. And they're yet to be overran this season, and that speaks massive volumes to how good they've both been, but especially Jeglertz, absolutely everywhere, covered every single yard of the pitch, and was a massive part of why City won the game, because she would turn the ball over and then not just give up or give it to someone else. She was then the one to bring the ball forward and to help City get out, and played a vital role because Arsenal just couldn't get near her.
Yeah, there's a tenacity to her game and how she's able to win the ball back and create chance for City. I think the other thing that it does is it frees up Hasegawa to be more of a creative player. and 2 chances created in this game for Hasegawa, 1 big chance. It shows that she's given more of a license to get forward. I thought Viviana Miedemar was much better in this game out of possession. That's been my biggest criticism of her this season, is that she's a little bit of a passenger when they don't have the ball. But I thought she put more of a shift in this game, possibly at the detriment of the attacking side of her game, but I think that was beneficial for the team. Can't really talk about City Arsenal without discussing Chloe Kelly. The pumping of the badge towards the Arsenal fans for the goal. I like that. I like that rivalry and the aggression behind that. Did think it was a little weird when she did it after fouling Iwahabi. I do think the social media reaction to that has been overblown. Of course, that's the nature of social media, but I did think that was a bit strange.
Yeah, it was a weird one. I think, as you say, it was one of those where it's fine. You've scored a goal against a former side. To be honest, if you don't leave on respectful terms, I feel like you should celebrate your former side, because you're at your new team, you're loving life.
I think you should have done it in front of the home fans.
Yeah,
gesture it to them, and full Adebayor ran the length of the pitch, knee slid in front of them, and pumped the badge.
Exactly that, and I think a great strike to get your current club back in the game. 100%. Celebrate all you want. Doesn't matter who you're playing against. But yeah, it was needless, is what it was. And I think again we saw that in a couple of moments in this game, and it does happen in the big games. Just needless things that happen that don't add anything to the game, but just silly little things.
I think what it was is aggression, and City's aggression manifested in being physical to knock Arsenal off the ball, being disciplined, and then being organised and being aggressive to win that ball back. Arsenal's manifested itself in nudges off the ball and McCabe thumping into people and Kelly's reaction to stuff like this. So I just think they struggled to handle the occasion, Arsenal, to a degree, which I thought was quite strange, given a lot of these players have played in high-pressure situations before, and you wouldn't have expected it from players like Kelly and McCabe.
But it speaks volumes about the situation that they knew they were in. The players knew that after dropping points to Villa and having already drawn to United, that if they lost this football match, they would be up against it for the rest of the season, and that's exactly where they've landed themselves. So I think that they felt the pressure, especially after going 1-0 down, because they knew they were in trouble. They knew that this game was a massive one that they probably needed to win. So when they did start losing, I think it boiled over a little bit, because you mentioned McCabe there. I was a bit disappointed in McCabe, because it's the same thing that happens every time, because I thought she had a really good half and was playing a good game, but City go 1-0 down, she gets a bit frustrated and just does something completely unnecessary that she was very lucky to get away with. And it's things like that Arsenal did not need in the match. They need to keep their heads and keep going, and that didn't happen. I think you say they got caught up in the occasion, but that's what pressure does in football. When you're up against it, when you've been chasing the title for the last few years, and you've always been the chasers. It's not even like they've led at points and then Chelsea have caught them up. For the majority of the last few years, Arsenal have been chasing, so they knew how important it was that they got the 3 points in this football match and closed that gap after Chelsea didn't win. And they, with a loss, they failed to do that. They put themselves in a worse position than they were when they came into the weekend. And I think they really felt that during the game.
Yeah. I think the other thing that was very apparent was that Slegers didn't have a plan B. I think when you need a goal and you throw 4 players up front, it reminded me of Yui Hasegawa. In that game against Aston Villa was the one that came to mind, where they ended up with like 5 attackers on the pitch and they had 2 centre-backs, and they were just pumping it long in a desperate hope to score a goal. And I think they did score that day. Or at least, I think it was an equaliser. But that's what it reminded me of desperation. Arsenal didn't have a plan B. Slegers did. And she's a young coach. That is what is expected. And I think there needs to be patience applied. The Champions League win has very much changed the expectations, perhaps unfairly, to Slegers, because I think if they hadn't won that, you'd probably come into the season and go with less pressure. But I think the pressure is costing them points, and the players are feeling that. City, though, propelled right into the title fight, second in the league, 1 point behind Chelsea. Considering they lost them on the opening day, it's not bad going at all for City.
It's the near perfect situation to be in, as you say, to be a point behind Chelsea, having already played them, is a brilliant position to be in, because while the teams below them, United have gone to Chelsea, but they're behind. City are ahead of them. Arsenal are all the way down the table and still haven't played Chelsea. So to have played the league leaders and still be a point behind them is massive credit to Andrée Jeglertz. They have been competitive in every single match that they've played. 4 wins from 4 now, and after the losing the opening day, it's been a very, very good campaign. I think that again, I think there's two things to look at here. Is that Jeglert's ball is working. They're playing really, really well, and the football is starting to click. But also B is what they're doing that I don't think any other side bar Chelsea has had in the last couple of years is the good teams or the better quality team finding a way to win. And I think we've seen it in a couple games with City now where even when it's the biggest thing that we always say for Chelsea compared to other times. When Chelsea play on a bad day for Chelsea, they find a way to win the football match. When other teams have a bad day, they lose. But from what I think we've seen from City is that at times this season, even when they've not been at their best, even when there are still teething issues under Jeglertz, they've found a way to get the result. And that is title-winning material. And again, they don't want to get ahead of themselves. They have done well, but there's still a long way to go. But I think that you have to. There's a lot of positivity because the fact they're still getting again, another thing, they've got the amount of attacking injuries we've seen from City this year. This happened last season and it completely derailed their campaign. Yeah. Whereas this season, even they went into this weekend with no Hemp, no Murphy, no Kerolin, no Fowler. They still put a front three out of Clinton, Shaw and Fujino, and they won the football match. And I think that is a massive positive. It's never a positive with all those players out injured, but the fact that they can field such a strong 11 with all the injuries they've got is very promising because it means for me that there's more chance we see a consistent and a season where they're putting in the same performances across the board. But yeah, really bright start from City.
I did think there was a certain irony as well about Chloe Kelly being on the bench while City needed a left winger. I thought that was remarkably ironic. But yeah, I think City are in a great position now. They've scored the most goals out of any team in the league this season. I think there's some concerns over their defence, but if they've conceded 7 goals, that has to be a concern from 5 games. But when you consider that 4 of those have come against Arsenal and Chelsea, it definitely does go some way to lighten the discouragement. But they have conceded in every game so far this season. Yeah. That's something they've got to tighten up. But if they can just beat Everton by outscoring them, maybe it's okay. But yeah, I think that that's one of the aspects that comes as well with learning a new system. Is that there are going to be imperfections at the moment. It is just a defensive transition. I think they are struggling a little bit where they all try and get back and you end up with a defensive line and they're a bit too deep at times and invites pressure, or they're too high and there's space in behind to attack it. They've been exploited in different ways this season. But yeah, still some teething issues. But overall, really impressive from City. I think the fact that they are now in a strong position in second in the league, testament to what Jeglertz has done, and I think they should be very optimistic for the season ahead. Let's move on then to Manchester United 1 Chelsea. We all expect this to be a very tight affair coming into it, and I think, especially for the first half, it delivered.
It's exactly what we've asked for from a title battle, from a title game for the last few years. Is both sides who are involved at the sharp end of the table, going at it against each other, but competing, it being a close match. Chelsea have turned up really the last couple of years and rolled over or been convincing winners against their title rivals. But United were right on it in this game, and it was a brilliant football match. It was a great contest, and I think that to see both sides playing well and matching each other was exactly what we wanted to see. And it was a thoroughly enjoyable watch because you just didn't know which way it was going to go. It was so tight, it could have gone either way, and a very, very good football match. And it was one of those where, again, as I said, if it was close but both sides weren't playing very well, it wouldn't have been as good of a game. But the fact that both sides were delivering a really good performance and just cancelling each other out was great. Both sides executed their game plans exactly how they did, and if anything, United's game plan actually stopped Chelsea a little bit. But I thought it was a really good football match, very, very close, and it was kind of what we expected. Both sides have started the season brilliantly, and there was very little to separate them. I got the prediction bang on, so I was very happy with that. But yeah, a brilliant 90 minutes that, despite the conditions, was a very, very good watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was overall a really interesting game. Football. Both sides had different periods of control. I think the first half, Chelsea were the better side, but I think United did really well to weather that early storm. And then the second half, there just seemed to be periods where either side would have a lot more of the ball and create chances. And that seemed to come as well with substitutions. As either team changed things up, they seemed to create more opportunities. But yeah, I thought second half, what United did really well was respond to how Chelsea played in the first half. I think at half time, Chelsea being in front probably would have been a fair reflection on that first half. But in the second half, United did really well to shut Chelsea down And yeah, it's a really disciplined, organised performance. But on that first half, the stats were quite different because throughout the game, 49% possession. In the first half, United had a lot more of the ball, 54%. But Chelsea created a lot more chances. 0.41 XG for United, 2.23 for Chelsea in that first half. I don't think it's remiss to say that Chelsea probably should have been leading going into half-time. There's the chance of Aggie Beever-Jones after a handful of minutes that really should have gone in. Great break down the right-hand side. Ellie Carpenter putting the ball into the box. Beever-Jones should have finished that off. And there's the bigger captain chance just before half-time where it fell to her in the 6-yard box and she fired it straight at Tyler Choice. Great stop from the goalkeeper. But those chances changed games, but United rode out those moments. And on the Beever-Jones one, Letizia did really well to put her under pressure and make that difficult. And obviously a great stop from Tyler Choice to deny Vika Captime. But yeah, Chelsea started the game really fast. I thought it was a really good attacking performance. 8 shots, 3 shots on target, 3 big chances created, and 2 missed. Obviously, 1 taken with the goal. But I thought they did really well first half. Second half, United did really well to nullify a lot of those threats.
Yeah, exactly that. It was the best attack versus the best defence in the league. And Chelsea came forward, brilliant football. The first goal was absolutely lovely. But I thought that, as you say, it was the way United reacted to the whole game was superb and exactly what they needed to do. The way they reacted to going 1-0 down was absolutely superb, and it's exactly what they need to do, and it's what's caught them out in the last couple of years, because conceding pretty early on to Chelsea can completely change the game, because usually from there Chelsea will just go on and control it. But United did so well to react to that goal and get on the front foot, get back on the ball, and just get themselves into the game and then go on to equalise. But yeah, it was one of those where on another day, if Chelsea had taken their chances, then they could have been leading going into half time. But United, I thought, did well to react to going a goal down, and then even when they were level with Chelsea, Skinner still realised that it wasn't good enough. And again, that is a testament to the way he's developed as a manager, because a couple of years ago, if United were level 1-1 at half time with Chelsea, Skinner would have been overjoyed and loving life. But this year he went, no, we're level, but we still haven't been good enough. We need to stop them doing what they're doing. And he made tweaks, he made changes that helped them at the break, and that's what won them this game, is the fact that it wasn't. It's very easy to go out with a plan against Chelsea. The brilliance of Bompastor goes, okay, well, we'll just change this up and go this way, and then they score against you and they win the game. But I thought United and Skinner did well to just get through the difficult bits, see themselves over, get through certain periods, ride the storm, and then react to whatever Chelsea were doing. But yeah, it was very well defended from United, as we expected. They're a brilliant backline. The organisation was superb, and it was Chelsea's good football almost that won Chelsea those opportunities. But I think you can't really criticise United for the chances that Chelsea created, because it was good football from Chelsea, and I don't think United did too much wrong for those opportunities. Not much they could have done at the goal either, but it was one of those where when you get the best attack in the league against the best defence in the league, it was always going to be a very interesting battle, especially in the early stages.
Yeah, on individuals, let's start with the goal scorers, because Anna Sandberg obviously gave away the ball for Chelsea's first goal, and I think overall in the first half really struggled to deal with Carnereid. But the strike was excellent, and in the second half she kept Carnereid out of the game, really. Yeah,
it's been a really good season for Sandberg. She did struggle in that first half, but again, it's the reaction, it's the way that she learnt from that first 45 and picked it up, and again delivered a really good performance overall. And the goal, I mean, what a time to score your first Man United goal, and what a way to score it. A brilliant volley in a massive, massive game for the title race. And it just fell to her, didn't it? It was one of those where it bounced up perfectly and she ran onto it, called it, everyone got out of the way, and she just ran onto it and struck it so beautifully into that bottom corner. Nothing Hannah Hampton could have done. But I thought Sandberg did really well to learn from the way that because that battle between her and Carnereid was fascinating to watch. Absolutely brilliant to see them going at it. And as you said, I think in the first half, Carnereid had the upper hand, but Sandberg learned from that, adjusted in the second half, and probably had Carnereid's number in that second 45 minutes. But yeah, a brilliant goal, a massively important goal, and overall a very decent performance from Sandberg.
Yeah, I thought she was excellent. To the other way, the goal scorer for Chelsea, Vika Captime, another week where she was the most impressive player on the pitch for Chelsea. I thought her work, both sides of the ball, was phenomenal in this game. Her pressing, and that's what won the ball high up the pitch for her goal. She then moves it out wide, and rather than resting on her laurels, rather than standing on the edge of the box. She makes that run inside, and as the play progressive, Carney chops inside, chops outside, chops everywhere, then plays into Macario, and Captain's in the perfect position to receive that back pass and slot it past Talis Joyce. So, another week where Vika Captain showing her worth, showing why Sonia Van Pastor views her as so important to this Chelsea team. But she should have scored again, but that great positioning to get in that position. Really should have put it away. Don't doubt that at all. But did really well to get into that position. And I think Chelsea created the chances to win this game. United did well, I think, to respond to that in the second 45, showing their worth to draw this match. But United still showing an inability to beat these top teams.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is something that's got to be addressed, because although it is almost a game plan from Skinner, I think especially in the Arsenal game, less so in this one, I think that they're a little bit more aggressive in this one, but across the two games, it's very much been a bit of a mentality of don't lose. And I think the fact they conceded early in this game against Chelsea actually helped them, because then they had to go for the game, they had to go at Chelsea, and they looked better in doing so. But I think, again, it is just that mentality shift, but I don't necessarily mind it this early on in the season, because you take Arsenal, for example, they've gone for it, they've tried to win these big games.
I think Arsenal have been just as passive. The difference is that United have got the defence to back them up, and when they play other teams in the league, the weaker sides, they beat them comfortably, whereas Arsenal, obviously playing Villa, slipped up. That's the difference between the two this season at the moment. United on 11 points, Arsenal on 8. The difference is that Arsenal slipped up against City and lost, whereas United have drawn both their sides against top teams, and Arsenal slipped up against Aston Villa. That's the difference between those two at the moment.
Yeah, I think, and it's not necessarily a bad thing for United at this point being a little bit passive in those bigger games, because, as you say, if they keep the points ticking over,
they're unbeaten.
Again, they are exactly. They're unbeaten. You can't, and I think again that is really good season overall management from Skinner, because he understands that although the league isn't won in October, but it could easily be lost. And he's learned that from the last couple of years, and that's something that sides are going to start to get used to, is that you never win a league in October, because sides can always catch up. But it's very easy to fall away at this point, but and then find yourselves too far out of it, especially when there are 3 or 4 teams in that race. If you end up being the back one of those 4, you've got to try and jump 3 teams over the course of a season, which is very difficult. But it's good management. Of course, they won't be able to do it when it comes to later in the season, when it does matter and when they do need to win those games, and that will be the test, is in how they play in those bigger games come towards the end of the campaign. But I think
how they juggle Champions League football. I mean, they play Manchester City in November. The week before, in the Wednesday, they play PSG. So handling that week's will be interesting, when City will have the whole week to prepare. But that is still a few weeks off. But definitely going to be interesting how United get on. Chelsea remaining the team to beat, but their lead is cut down to just 1 point to City and 1 point to Tottenham, who we will get to in a moment. But Chelsea remaining the team to beat.
Exactly. Bompastor's reaction was, I thought, was refreshing to see from a Chelsea point of view, and it speaks about the standard that she holds. I've never seen a manager so frustrated to draw a match against another top team. Bompastor really wanted to win the football match, because it's what Chelsea do, it's what the top sides do. They're ruthless, and they go out and they try and they usually just obliterate everybody in the first half of the campaign. They get to January and they're pretty much champions, and I think that it will be the comfortability, I think, that Bompastor's most frustrated about, was that yes, they drew the game and they are still unbeaten this season, and unbeaten across every single domestic match under Bompastor, but it was the fact that on another day they may have not drawn the game and United could have got something from it. And I think that they'll work on it, Chelsea. They're still unbeaten. They still look very, very good. But I think it was the reaction of champions. They weren't happy with a draw, but that's exactly what you expect from a side that have just gone invincible. A draw is viewed as a bad result, because when you aren't losing, there's nothing worse than a draw. So I think that it was a fiery reaction from Bompastor, but she's a winner. That's why she was so frustrated to draw this football match. But Chelsea still looking good. Nothing to be ashamed of. We knew that, again, it was going to be a tight game this weekend, and to not lose is probably you can't complain at that. You're still leading the league. You're still unbeaten, and the gap closes. Everyone else jumped a little bit, but that will even out over the campaign when City have to go to United, and when Tottenham I don't know what's going to happen with them. But I think overall, not a bad result for either Chelsea or United, and they'll both be happy to remain unbeaten, and especially Chelsea still sitting top of the league.
Well, we've covered first, we've covered second, and the games they were involved in this weekend, and we've covered fourth and fifth. Should we get to third and sixth?
Yes.
Tottenham 1-0 Brighton. Don't think many people saw Tottenham being third after 5 game weeks coming, but they genuinely look really good. Defence is strong and disciplined. I think what Martin Ho wanted to do at the start of this season was bring in a structure and a foundation from which they can build their season from, and he wanted to focus on a very much defence-first mindset, while also bringing in elements, of course, of positional play and of bringing in elements of possession-based football. And I think in this game was the first time we've seen their attack really click. They've relied in these other matches on moments where they're able to capitalise on defensive errors and then find goals as a consequence. In this game, they tore Brighton apart in attacking areas. They opened up so much space, and Brighton had very little in terms of a response.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, although the result isn't as big or the best result they've had this season, it was probably one of their best performances. It was the control, as you say. It was the control that we associate with the big teams, with the top teams. Is that Tottenham never looked like losing this football match, and that is something that I never thought I'd say about Tottenham after last season. Massive credit to Martin Ho for the work he's done. It's like Vidicic last season in terms of the way that Martin Ho has come in with an idea, with a system that's caught everybody out, and they're just good. They're brilliant in every game because no one knows how to deal with them. The difference between what Vidicic was doing and what Ho is doing is that Ho has brought a lot more control and discipline to Tottenham. That's exactly what he needed to do, and he's done well to not overcomplicate it. He hasn't tried to run before he can walk, because this Tottenham last season were an absolute disaster because there was no identity. Villaharm didn't seem to have an idea of what he wanted to do. But Ho has come in and he's found a really good balance between having a good tactical system but not overcomplicating it, not being too extreme, and not trying to do too many overzealous things. Martin Ho has brought the basics in while still adding bits of flair and bits that change games. But yeah, it was controlled. The whole game was dictated by Tottenham, and when you put a good defensive performance with a strong and dangerous attack, Brighton really didn't stand a chance. And it was surprising to see a Brighton side who have also started the season pretty well and we know have a lot of quality were stunted. They didn't look dangerous at any point. They couldn't lay a finger on Tottenham, and although it was only 1-0, it was all, for me, it was always destined to be a Tottenham win. It was a really good performance, and I think it shows where Tottenham are at right now.
Yeah, as you say, Brighton never looked like scoring. They had more possession in this game than Tottenham, but it was marginal, 53% to 47%. A lot of that came in the second half, where they had 64% of the ball. But Tottenham very much sat off a lot deeper, and Tottenham still had more shots on target, and more big chances created than Brighton in that second half. But for Brighton, across the entire match, 2 shots on target, 0 big chances, and must have just 0.73 expected goals. And when you consider that Vidicic is very much about being a sort of all-out attacking team. Now, Brighton are changing the way that they are trying to play. I think last season they were very much, and this is why it wasn't sustainable, they were very much gung-ho. They wanted to attack teams. They wanted to put teams under pressure. They wanted to play out from the back. And there was a fearlessness, and you always sort of looked at Brighton and went, well, this probably isn't sustainable. This season, there's definitely been a focus after what was a pretty disastrous back half of last season, where I think they only picked up about 7 points after January or something like that. In that second half of the season, it was disastrous, and I think they're now very much focusing on being a much more solid defensive unit, and we've seen that so far this season for Brighton. They've only conceded 4 goals, but that is seeing their attack suffer as a consequence. They've only scored 6 goals this season, so they are looking better defensively, but yeah, it was a bit of a damp squib in terms of them trying to come forwards today. I don't think... Well, I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you think it was a blip for Brighton today, or perhaps a sign of deeper issues in attack?
I think it's half and half. On one hand, they came up against very good opposition in Tottenham, and I know we're only starting the season, but do we? It depends how you consider Tottenham. Do we still consider them as a mid-table, maybe top-half club, or are they now looking...
People on stream today who I think may have been consuming something that made them happy because they said that Tottenham were going to get Champions League football. I thought that was quite a jump.
They're in the UWSL places.
Currently are.
They're there right now, but I think that Tottenham are making a real push this season to be best of the rest, and then suddenly you've got to judge Tottenham as an opposition who are on par with Brighton, who finished 5th last season. And when you look at it at that point, only losing 1-0 doesn't look too bad for Brighton. And again, I think that defensive record comes through there because on another day, maybe they would have, last season, maybe Brighton would have conceded more. I think attacking-wise, it was surprising, especially the quality in that front line when you've got the players that Brighton have in the attack in the final third. And although Tottenham have defended well, they've still conceded, 6-7 this season, and we know that defense.
Tottenham.
Yeah.
Tottenham have conceded 6 goals this season. 5 against Man City, 1 in the other 4 games.
Yeah, I forgot the City game was that bad, but it was one of those where I think even if Brighton had been more aggressive, it would have just turned into a more basketball game. It'd have been very, very open, and based on form, that would probably favour Tottenham a little bit more with the way they're scoring goals with the brilliant attacking players that they've now also got, and they're starting the really good attackers rather than watching Marta Thomas run around every week. Martin Ho is getting it bang on at the moment, and they're stunting every team in their path. And I think that the 5-1 I think brought people right back down to earth in terms of Tottenham are just going to fall through the table again. They've started well, but this game has put them right back in that conversation.
I think it's impressive how they've bounced back as though it didn't happen. And I think this is why it'll probably be more sustainable, because I look at the way Tottenham play, and I think they'll probably beat every team in the league outside the top 4. Now, they'll probably have a slip-up at some point. I think they're going to stay perfect. But they're also going to lose to everyone in the top 4, because I think those sides have players who will break Tottenham structures too easily. We look at the City game, and it came down to individuals like Hasegawa being able to play fantastic passes out to wide players, which stretch Tottenham's backline. But no other team in the league does that, apart from Chelsea, United, Arsenal, perhaps. So I think it's a very sustainable way to win football matches, and they've been very impressive. You spoke about Brighton's front line and their inability to get involved in this game. Just a statistic: Michelle Aguiman lost the most duels in this match, 10. She got bullied by those defenders. 4 out of 12 ground duels, so 8 lost. 1 out of 3 aerial duels, and Koga and Hunt both had a 100% success rate on aerial duels. She couldn't get involved in the game, and a lot of Brighton's play relies on Aguiman holding up the ball and bringing others into play, which just didn't happen. And they massively missed Fran Kirby as well. Nordam is a good player, but she doesn't replace what Kirby does, and being able to be that creative outlet, being able to receive the ball in the edge of the box, create chances, get shots away. You just don't get the same from Nordam. So I think that those were the problems for Brighton in this match, but it is concerning you take one player out and they can't create chances. That was a bit of a concern. Martin Ho, though, deserves his plaudits. He's created such a synergy and understanding amongst the players so quickly. They've adapted to a new system fairly seamlessly, and it's been really impressive. The question I want to ask before we move on: how far do you think Tottenham can go? 3rd place in the league. Justice table shows they should be in and around 5th place, and when you consider obviously that United and Arsenal played a lot of big games, that's why they're behind them at the moment. So what is the ceiling for this team? Can they keep performing at this level?
I think that at UWSL, they're in the UWSL places. That's not going to happen. Let's be honest.
I don't think anyone is doubting you there.
Yeah, I think they'll fall behind the big 4 as expected, because as you mentioned it a moment ago, what Martin Ho has done is he's brought in a system that will compete and mostly beat everyone in the bottom half of the table, but it's a little bit too simple that it's never going to catch out anyone in the big 4.
But they've already adjusted. The attack in this week looked much more synergised and much more fluid than it has in opening weeks. So potentially we could see an evolution.
Well, exactly. That's what my question was going to be, is that how do they step it up? Because if they do now add layers to the foundations that you put in, they will get better and better as the season goes on. Then suddenly, maybe they are cracking the big 4. But I think that they will, for me, they'll be in that best of the rest conversation. That 5th place has to be where they're looking at, because we saw it last season with Brighton. Even if this good run continues, even if then it gets a little bit tough in the middle bit or towards the end of the season, they could get enough points now that will just see them sit in that 5th place or sit around 5th, 6th. So I think that it's one of those where, for me, I'll be looking at best of the rest. The way they're playing, I think they will only get better and better as it goes on. So yeah, I think fifth is where they've got to be aiming for.
Absolutely. I think any manager as well who can get Ash Neville playing as well as she did in this game deserves
Yeah.
a huge amount of plaudits because she was phenomenal in this game today. And I think last season we criticised her quite heavily on this show because she kept making mistakes, she kept giving away penalties. But to come back into the side today when she hasn't played yet this season and look as comfortable as she did, I think it's a testament to the work from Martin Ho and how this Tottenham side are playing this season. Let's move on then. London City Lionesses 1-0 Liverpool. This was a game where we had the option of streaming either Brighton Tottenham or London City Liverpool. Very glad I went for Tottenham Brighton because this was not a great game of football. It was a game where it feels like two sides who are very good at holding onto possession don't really know what to do with it, and neither of them knew what to do when the other team had possession either. These two sides had great spans of possession, actually 479 passes and 437 passes across the two sides. So look at the possession, it's pretty much 50-50, 52-48, very tight. So neither side dominated huge portions of the game, but they both had a lot of the ball, and neither of them really knew what to do with it. Neither side was able to penetrate particularly successfully the opposition structure, but equally, talking of the opposition, they didn't engage quickly to stop them being able to play out from the back. So it was a game where both sides just held the ball for ages, but neither side really did anything with it. I think London City were probably the better side throughout, created some good chances. There's still a disconnect, I think, in attacking areas, and they were still quite wasteful, but probably the better side in this game. 2.06 XG to 0.23, of course, as the penalty, and we'll get to that. But 2.06, you can't really argue with that compared to Liverpool not creating anything. 3 shots and 1 on target from Liverpool is absolutely abysmal. 9 shots, 5 on target, 5 big chances for London City Lionesses. 4 missed. The only one they didn't was from the penalty spot.
Yeah.
So that's got to be a problem for London City. And it goes against both of the numbers in this game go against everything I've thought of both of these sides so far this season. Because I look at London City, and they haven't really been able to create good chances, but they've had players who step up and finish off chances. But in this game, they create lots of good chances, and their brilliant players didn't finish the chances. As for Liverpool, they've been very good at creating chances, or holding on to the ball, being able to hold their own, and then creating chances, and then giving away a lot because they're not great defensively, and they're wasting a lot of chances. But they didn't create anything in this game.
Yeah, it was same problems really for Liverpool. In terms of London City's best chances was because Liverpool are trying to play possession football with players that just aren't good enough to do it at the moment, and they might learn it and we might see an adaptation, but right now the defenders that Liverpool have are not ball playing, they're not good enough on the football, and London City created loads of chances, but as you say, I don't think they did too much of that on their own. I think Liverpool just tried to play out. I mean, the amount of times we saw these penalty area scrambles where ball graph and there's Liverpool players are jumping and running around and it's just chaos in their own penalty area. And to be honest, without that, I genuinely think this game would have just finished 0-0 and no one would have created anything. And it would have been one of the worst games of football. But Liverpool is still the same problems, is that Gareth Taylor is trying to play football with players that aren't good enough to do what he wants to do, and half the time they can manage to put it together and it works, but the other half they give the ball away and they hand opportunities to the opposition. London City, again, they weren't tested at all defensively, so although it's a clean sheet and it's 3 points, they weren't put under any pressure whatsoever. I think the back four could have had an off day because Liverpool just got to the halfway line and just didn't know what to do with it. They just got stuck. It was like they weren't allowed to leave or something. So we had another frustrating day at the office for Liverpool. On paper, London City probably should have won. Overall, in terms of the game momentum, it was 0-0 written all over it. It should have ended 0-0. Both sides should have taken a point away, and it was going to be a disappointing day for the fans on either side. But the penalty had other ideas. But yeah, it was just carnage, sloppy mistakes from Liverpool. And London City on the whole were really, really, in clinical, but they managed to pounce from the penalty spot. That's about it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summarisation of the game. Liverpool haven't scored now in 384 minutes. The last time they scored was Cornelia Kapox on the opening day against Everton. Since then, it has been a barren time in front of goal for Liverpool. A lot of people weighing up, is it the attacking options? Is it Gareth Taylor? Well, some stats behind it. Only 3.1 XG generated this season, which is nowhere near high enough. But still, for the attacks to be underperforming by 2.1 XG, I think it's the highest underperformance in the attacking third of any team in the league. So it's sort of problems in both regards. Taylor's system isn't working at the moment. They're not able to create chances in a lot of games. And in the games where it is working, they haven't got the attackers to finish off the chances. It's just a difficult one to remedy, to solve, because Taylor is very much committed to his brand of football. I don't think he's a bad coach at all, but he's been given a Liverpool side that aren't suited to his style. Yeah. You've got to cut him some slack in that regard, because he came into the club in the most recent summer transfer window. They didn't really make the additions that he needed until deadline day. Those players haven't had time to bed in, seemingly. They've had the ongoing situation of a goalkeeper being investigated by the FA, and then in this game was very harshly given a penalty. If you look at, if that penalty doesn't happen, we look at this game as wasteful London City. Liverpool take a point from it, and I don't think that's a bad result for them. But the problem is they're sat on 0 points, and it just reflects really poorly on them. But we'll talk on that penalty. I don't think we can solve the attacking issues in one video. No. We're starting to discuss another time. But talk on the penalty, probably the worst decision I've ever seen of a penalty that's been given. I think there's so little in it. I don't know how he slipped. She gives off consequence rather than action.
Yeah, it's why that I think the first thing to explain is why Hasegawa's given it. Paris has got to the ball first, and then they've collided, and that, as you say, that will look like the attacker has dinked the ball over the goalkeeper, and then the goalkeeper's taken her out, and they've come together, they've ended up in a heap, and to the referee, to he slip, that looks like Paris has flicked it over and then been taken out, and she took a long time to give it, and I don't think she was helped out by a assistant referee at all, because she just she looked over her and she just stared blankly at her, which didn't help at all.
I think the difficulty is Heaslip doesn't give a decision. She looks at Borgraf, because you can see in the video, she looks at Borgraf, who is okay. She looks at Paris, who's down injured, and blows a whistle and awards a penalty. And I think in that moment, it was very difficult, obviously, with the flow of the game, to see exactly what happened. But you see a goalkeeper that's absolutely fine. You see that the striker's poked it over her, and you see the striker down in a heap, and you assume the goalkeeper's made contact. Ultimately, Paris has studded a goalkeeper after flicking the ball over her head, and she's won a penalty. I think it's very fortunate, because we'd be talking about London City in a very different light if once again they were very wasteful. Actually, for the first time this season, created lots of chances, but were very wasteful. We talk about them very differently to now, where they're now on 6 points, they're 7th in the table, and you look at their season and go, well, they've won the games they should have won against Liverpool and Everton, and they've been battered by teams that are considerably better than them in the form of Manchester City, Arsenal, and Manchester United. So it's interesting. I think, Liverpool weren't great in this game, though.
No.
Based on expected goals, based on underlying numbers, London City should have been winning anyway, but they didn't take those chances. A win is probably a fair judgment on the game, but it came for a very fortuitous manner for London City.
Yeah, I think that for London City, they're doing exactly what a promoted side need to do, which is taking advantage of oppositions being really, really poor. That's exactly what they've done so far, and it will be enough to keep them in the league, because there are certain sides in the WSL right now that are not playing well enough, and that may change in the second half of the season, and that we'll see. But right now, if London City can just keep beating the sides who aren't playing well enough, that will get them enough points to stay in the division. And I think they've done really well, because they're nowhere near the dreaded donut which Liverpool and West Ham currently find themselves on. But 6 points from your first 5 matches. I can't remember the last time a promoted side did that in the women's game. It's not, you can't really complain.
I think it's very different. It's very easy to forget they're a promoted side because they spent £3 million, and obviously that you do have to consider them slightly differently, because they spent £3 million in the summer. So you can't go, well, Crystal Palace really should have got 6 points last season when they had about £4.50 in a dream. But you have got to got to weigh up both sides. They are a promoted side, but they have also spent an awful lot of money. They go into West Ham next week, which, based on form, they should win comfortably. Yeah. If they win that, they're guaranteed to be in the top half of the table, because Arsenal and Brighton play each other, and London City will have to jump at least one, if not both of them.
Yeah.
If they win next week and Arsenal lose to Brighton, they will be ahead of Arsenal in the table.
Crazy.
Which, after game week 1, nobody would have expected. But that's the position they're in now.
Yeah.
And they're only 2 points behind Arsenal. So, It's been very interesting. I don't think Man City have played incredibly well yet. So if they do start playing well, maybe they're going to look even better in the table. And let's move on then. Speaking of West Ham 0-2 Aston Villa. Another really poor performance, I thought, from West Ham. Especially in terms of actually finishing chances off in this game, because they did get shots away. They did have moments where they weren't awful, and they couldn't take them. 12 shots, 1 shot on target.
Wow.
It's just abysmal, really, for West Ham. Abysmal reading, and every time Aston Villa came forward, West Ham, they were better defensively, but there's still a lot of disorganisation, a lot of panic, and I don't think they dealt with either goal particularly well. The Hansen one off the corner, someone's got to close that down. It's a great strike, don't get me wrong, nothing the keeper can do, but someone's got to close down Hansen quicker on that one, you feel?
Yeah, again, it's one of those where the actual strike they can't do anything about, but it's the build-up to that. It's a short corner. Get the basics right. One player is in charge of defending the player who's gone short, and another player is on the taker. But no one picks up the taker. She plays a 1-2 with Lynn Wilms, and no one's picked up Kirsty Hansen. That's the basics of defending. You're taught that in youth football, that someone is always there to pick up the corner taker if they run in from a short corner. That's basics of football, and that's what's let them down, because, as I say, on the whole, they had some really bright moments, but when the basics fall away, you are always going to lose a football match. And again, it was the same for the second goal. The basics of goalkeeping is that you stand on the other side. You stand on, if your wall is covering one side of the goal, you stand on the other side. And again, King Ashemit got that one wrong.
It's not even based on goalkeeping, it's logic.
Yeah.
If there are 4 tall players blocking this part of the goal, I'm not going to stand behind them. If I'm the goalkeeper, I'm going to stand to the bit they're not blocking. Yeah. So that was fairly poor. It's a great strike from Lynn Wilms. Both goals were really well taken by Villa. It's one of those days to Villa where they didn't have to do a lot to win this game. They never really got out of about 5th gear. You know, they had a lot more gears in there. I don't know why their car's got more than 6 gears.
Wow.
That's 5th gear sounds quite high now. Never really got out of 2nd gear, Aston Villa. 1.15 XG to 1.06 looks a lot more even than the game was. They had less shots than West Ham, but 4 on target and 2 big chances created. They missed both of those, but they put in 2 great goals that had low XG chances. Kirsty Hansen was 0.03, Lynn Wilms free kick 0.18, but yeah, both well-taken strikes that made it very difficult for them to be stopped. And yeah, that's what you get from quality players. That's why you invest in quality players. But yeah, it's an important 3 points for Aston Villa against the sides that they had to beat, given the form that West Ham are in. But yeah, I feel like a lot of Villa fans... There was a Villa fan in chat earlier on the Brighton Tottenham stream talking about how disappointed they felt about the season so far. But I do feel that Villa have been incredibly unlucky with who they played in the first few games. Obviously, the Liverpool game got postponed, so they didn't play that. So they're a game behind everyone else, yet they sit 8th in the table on 5 points. Only 4 points behind Arsenal with a game in hand, which is now going to be the yardstick for everything in this video. But yeah, I don't think Villa have done too badly. This is a 3 points where they should have got 3 points. That's merited.
Yeah, it's one of those where I think it's a really difficult one for Arroyo, because in the games they've played well, they haven't got the results. But in this game, it was probably one of their worst performances of the season, yet they won the football match. And it's one of those where I think they've still got things to work out, because if they've played like this against a better opposition, they would have lost, because it wasn't good enough at times. And to give a side 12 shots and to not be punished for that is a little bit fortunate, or to not even concede a big chance is a little bit fortunate, and massive problems in both thirds of the pitch for West Ham. But
to be fair, West Ham they had 1 shot over 0.1 XG. It's a lot of shots, but they never. There was only one chance they really looked like scoring, and that was there's Katrina Gorridge one on target. Yeah. It was a good save, and Asayi was at close range and probably should have done better. Apart from that, they didn't really do a lot. So yeah, I do get your point, because they didn't create loads themselves, but they did have Grant's ball across the box that Kirsty Hansen missed an open goal for, and they did then score 2 really good goals. So it's difficult to criticise Villa, because this is not a representative team, really. West Ham looks so poor at the moment that, anything other than a win would be a fairly poor day out.
Yeah, and for West Ham, I mean, the only thing worse than the donut 0 is having a terrible, terrible goal difference. They are in a really really sticky situation now because I just look at it and think, when does their next point come? They're not playing well enough. It's not. Even when sides don't pick up points in their first few games, sometimes you can go, well, they've shown a little bit of promise and maybe they could nick something here or there, but they've shown nothing. I haven't seen a side like this that looks so poor in both thirds of the pitch. Because even last year when they had defensive problems, the attack was absolutely flying, and it's the same attackers. So then, when it's the same personnel, pretty much the same personnel from last season, the big question you got to look at is the manager.
I think Skinner's on borrowed time. If I'm honest. I think to caveat it slightly, West Ham have played every side they've played. I'd expect to be in the top half of the table.
That is true.
The next run's really important. They play London City this weekend. That feels like a must win.
Yes.
City isn't great, but then they go on a run of Leicester and Everton. Then they play United and then Liverpool, and that is half the then that's halfway through the season. And they've really struggled though. But 5 goals against Arsenal, 4 goals against Chelsea, 4 goals against Brighton. When and you look at that Brighton side, who were awful in attack against Tottenham. It's one of those. Yeah, they just look really, really poor defensively at the moment. They look poor everywhere, and that's the problem, as you say. Last season, at least they had the attack that sort of that made things okay. But even then, their goal difference would have looked a lot worse if they hadn't put 7 past Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
So I 16 goals conceded so far this season. The next most is London City Lionesses with 14, but they've won their other 2 matches. They didn't play against top sides, so they should be okay in that regard. But only no other side conceded more, and only Liverpool has scored less. So fairly abysmal reading at the moment for West Ham, and I wouldn't be surprised if Raya. I would be surprised if Raya's getting in a job after the new year. At this rate, even then, that feels quite a way away, given how poor this season. The start of the season has been. And let's get to the last game then. And the side who are expected really to be bottom at this stage, Leicester City, a point for them. Leicester City won 1 Everton. Neither goal was particularly impressive. Both, I think, examples of really poor goalkeeping.
Yeah, it was a tough day at the office for both front lines. I think in this football match you could have just deleted both final thirds and just left everyone to play in the middle of the pitch, because it was a really...
They mustered up a combined 14 shots.
And they were all of really low quality. But I think the big thing is that Everton created, I think, 4 big chances.
Everton 4 big chances, only 3 shots on target.
So what? I don't understand. And some of them, Everton are in big trouble because they're not. Again, it depends how you look at it. Because is it better or worse than that? To not be clinical and to be really poor in front of goal when you're not creating anything is kind of expected, because if you're not getting chances, how are you going to score? But I think you could view it as slightly worse if you're creating 4 big chances and not putting them anywhere near the goal. Yeah. And I think that Everton are going to have to be careful, because it wasn't good enough. Leicester are doing exactly what a side in trouble need to do when you've got an interim manager. Just keep the points ticking over, and they've done really well at that. And they have not been ripping up trees and they have not played brilliantly, but did anyone expect them to? Rick Passmore came in on the eve of the season starting. They didn't have a brilliant summer transfer window. No one expected Leicester to be brilliant going into this campaign. So the fact that Rick Passmore is keeping the points ticking over is a massive credit to him and the work he's doing. They're playing in a way to stop other teams rather than making themselves look good, and it's working so far. But Sorensen and Everton... It was, another difficult day at the office. And again, even when they did finally hit the back of the net, they should have seen that out. And then, I don't know, I watched some of the worst defending and the worst goalkeeping I've seen all season. My, oh my, how does Mouchon score from there? Really stunned me. I think that Everton have got some problems that they need to address, because, again, they've got to be careful that, without that opening, they got a point. And that's where I caveat it slightly, where... They managed to get a point from a game they didn't play well in, but I think they've got to be careful, because it's not sustainable. You can't play like this and keep expecting to pick up points.
First half, stats are grim reading. 42% possession for Leicester, 58 for Everton, but just 2 shots. 0.1 XG for Everton, 0.07 for Leicester. 2 shots apiece. 1 on target from Everton, none on target from Leicester. In the game in a totality, 0.36 XG to 0.34 XG. Neither side created anything of any quality in this match. And yeah, both the goals came down to awful goalkeeping. I thought Leipzig, 2 defensive errors from Leicester, left Vignola running through on goal. And Leipzig has got to come out and make herself big. Instead, she's really small and tries to swipe away at it with her hand. If she comes out big, you either put the strike off or you get in front of the shot.
Yeah.
But it just came out really small and gave Vignola the angle to score from. And yeah, obviously Emily Ramsey's one. Just kick it away.
Yeah.
Goes to pick it up and it lets it roll for her hands and had the audacity then to complain at someone for letting the shot in. Like, it's a fairly easy save, but yeah, really poor goalkeeping, and that's what cost both sides. I think for Sorensen, there was a lot of frustration when that goal went in, but ultimately the game should have been put to bed. Everton should have been miles better than this Leicester side, and they weren't, and they got punished for that. No, albeit it weren't a great goal, but it went in the back of the net. So yeah, I think again Everton were really poor. Leicester's the thing is, Leicester being poor has justification because they haven't had any investment. They have had such upheaval on the eve of this season. Everton doesn't, because they've spent a load of money. They've invested lots in their squad. Sorensen's got to start getting results soon. Because if not, there's only one man that there is going to be questions asked of, and that's Brian Sorensen. You've got the investment, you've got the players. Why isn't it clicking? Why are players being played out of position so consistently? It feels like Robert Villaharm all over again. I think what Everton should do is sack Sorensen and bring in Villaharm, see what happens.
Very great.
See if he comes to the same conclusion that Vignola's a striker, Cactus probably is right back. See what happens. But yeah, just really poor from Everton. Didn't create anything. And yeah, 4 points so for Leicester. Happy for them because of how much they've gone for already this season. But it does feel that if Liverpool and West Ham get their acts together, these two sides are in trouble. Yeah,
exactly that. And I think that is something they'll be aware of. But again, as I said, for Leicester, you just got to keep the points ticking over. For me, the highlight of the match was seeing Mouchon score again. That was lovely. A player.
The thing for Leicester is they've really limited how many they conceded. Only 8 goals conceded this season. And they've still mustered up 3 goals as well. You consider that they've already played Chelsea. They've already played Manchester United. They've played an informed Tottenham team as well. And then the other 2 results are positive. A win over Liverpool and a draw with Everton. They've got Villa next. That's going to be a toughie. They've got Arsenal the week after that. But then they go into West Ham, which has to be a win, really, at the moment. But yeah, if they can continue to maximise their results and keep games like Arsenal and Chelsea, if they can, games like Chelsea United, if they can apply that to games like Arsenal and keep those results down to a minimum, maybe even nick a draw, then Leicester will be okay this season. I think a lot of people were tipping them to be just in adversity, but they've actually held their own. And yeah, I think they can be incredibly proud of what they've managed to achieve so far this season. Let's move in then to our final segment of the show. The time to discuss aerial fantasy. A much better week, I felt, for my team. Anyone who watches this on a weekly basis will be very much accustomed to my usual complaints. It's still a down arrow, but it was less less embarrassing than normal. I was above the average.
Well done.
So thank you.
Welcome back.
I'm so grateful to you, Harry. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm also above the average. I'm still ticking along very nicely. I'm loving this game.
You only scored a point more than me this week.
Yes, and I did. I keep having a down arrow in our league. I'm not sure how that keeps happening because I've done all right, but yeah,
Do you want to go first?
Yes, I will go first. I'll be honest. Without Khadija Shaw, I would have done absolutely nothing this week. I captained her 7 points, doubled to 14. That was a really good total for her. 6 from Olivia Holt. She just keeps delivering. Not quite sure how this has worked, but she got visionary.
Well, yeah, definitely the clean sheet is apparently worthy of visionary points for
so
midfielders.
6 points for not really doing anything, but I'm not.
To be fair, she deserved it based on the pre-assist. The link up with now was excellent, so they don't award points for pre-assist.
I had Emily Fox on 4 for the assist, but obviously she conceded 3, so we didn't get maximised as much. I had Borgraf, who in the 88th minute was on 6 points, and 2 minutes later was on 1. So that was quite disappointing. Bar that, it was all 2s. Agumang, Simmons, both for Brighton, who didn't do anything. Rantala, who I thought might score for Everton, but again looked a little bit flat. Letizia and Bjorn, obviously both conceded, so got nothing from that. Fujino probably could have had a couple, should have got something from the game. I was a bit disappointed about that one. But overall, 40 points above the average. Not a brilliant week, but still pretty okay for me.
Yeah, fair enough. I got 39 points, so still less than you once again. But my week was very different. While you had one captain who came up big for you, my captain only scored 4 because I picked Ebony Salmon. I just thought with how bad West Ham were, that might pay off. It didn't. However, the rest of the team did do quite well. 5 from Toko Koga's been so consistent this season, apart from the Man City game and I think Leicester because they didn't keep a clean sheet. Really consistent points for me so far this season, so very happy with that. 10 from Mariona Caldente, great performance, picked up all the bonuses, and 6 from Katika Tamberg, who I brought in last week, so I'm very happy with that. Other than that, a load of 1s and 2s. Enadozi picked up 3, much happier with her in goal now than whatever the mess was at the start of the season, so I think, despite the fact they've got Arsenal this week, I'm going to stick with that. Moving into my team for this week, it's okay. The problem I've got is that I own 3 Tottenham players and 2 Brighton players, and they play Chelsea and Arsenal respectively. However, because it's a international break the week after, or we've got League Cup weekend and then international break, 2 weeks of no WSL action, I don't want to clean slate now, because if I get I could end up with 9 of my players injured or something ridiculous, because there's so much football in that time. There's Champions League match weeks, there are League Cup fixtures, and there's international games. So what I'd rather do is wait until we're coming out of those internationals, do my clean slate then, hopefully build up some money over that time. Because if you look at who's getting transferred in and out, you can make some money on this game because prices do rise and fall. So I'll probably wait and do my clean slate and just ride this team this week. But I'm going into it then Adozi and Ola Slagers against Arsenal, Reed against Brighton, who didn't even play this week, which is a bit concerning. Riviera against Everton, very happy with. Bizet against Everton, very concerned about. The only reason I could be okay there is that I do play Champions League football, so I'm going to wait and see who plays against Valerenga. But I think there's a chance that if they use some, I mean, the problem with Bizet and Riviera at the moment is that Bizet tends to be playing right back, so I've got 2 Manchester United right backs, only one of them can play, so it's not great. I've got Fujino against Liverpool, very happy with that. Kind of annoyed I don't have Khadija Shaw right now. Canada against Brighton, I'm happy with. Tambo against Chelsea, not particularly. Might try and make some transfers. I'm considering taking out Bizet because she's a lot of money and I could spread those funds elsewhere. Got Beaver Jones against Tottenham. She was probably going to take my armband because Chelsea are at home. And I got Salmon against Leicester. So I'm not too concerned there. So I think my moves will probably be to change out some of my Tottenham or Brighton players. Might just gamble on the fact that Arsenal weren't great in the last 3 weeks and pretend that I think Brighton are going to win. And if they don't, cry about it. But yeah, I'm just going to roll, see what happens this week, and then after that, I'm going to start taking this game seriously.
Fair enough. I'm not looking too bad in terms of the starting 11. I'm going to be adopting a back 5, which could be pretty interesting.
If you got
Laetitia and Riviere both against Everton, Bjorn against Tottenham, Fox against Brighton, which is a bit risky, and then Pattinson against West Ham, simply because my bench is not looking great, so I could make some transfers and then shuffle around.
Any concern over rotation with Pattinson, considering Corrales has played the last few?
Yep, but that is something I will address later down the line, or a problem that we may
possibly this week.
Yeah,
I have to address that.
I've got 2 transfers, so I might wriggle that out, might take her out, or take some of the players out and then bring them in and put her back on the bench.
I did think Lenari Pens was interesting, but the problem obviously is that I assume Aslani will take them when she's on the pitch.
Yes, and London City concede quite a few goals. I've got the City double, Fujino and Shaw against Liverpool. Shaw is 100% taking that armband. She has delivered in the last few weeks, and Liverpool cannot defend or do anything. So I think that'll be good. But yeah, apart from that, I've got a couple of players I want to change out. I don't really want Rantalo against Villa. So I need to make my transfers really and just see where I'm going to be at. But overall, I'm still in a very decent position.
My problem is the only way I could get to Shaw really is selling Salmon, which is difficult.
Yeah.
I could take out Tamberg again. I've got 3.7 in the bank, so I could take BJ Tamberg, and squeeze in a Khadija Shaw somewhere. But it would be very difficult. It'd be easier if I took out Salmon, but I don't really want to do that when she plays Leicester, despite the fact that Salmon hasn't done anything all season, apart from score against Arsenal. But yeah, so maybe she'll go. We'll see what happens. That, though, does round up today's episode. Hope you have enjoyed this a little bit earlier this week because we've got a lot of Champions League content coming over the next few days. Make sure to join us for all of those live streams. We're going to be live at every time there's a Champions League slot, so it'll be 6:15 and 8 o'clock on both days tonight, or tomorrow night, sorry, because this goes out on Monday. We've got Juventus Benfica, looking forward to that, and Arsenal OL Lionesses. And then we move in to 2 exciting games on Wednesday as well. We've got Chelsea versus FC Twente and Wolfsburg versus PSG. So a lot to look forward to in the Champions League this week. And then we move into a triple header, WSL action next Sunday. Can't wait. We're going to be live continuously from 11:45 until gone 6:30. So yeah, join us for that. Should be good fun. That, though, is everything from us today. I hope you have enjoyed. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.